Hello, everybody, and welcome. Just getting my sound settings correct here. I am Aurora. This class is called Path of Light. I'm super duper excited. It's October 16th, 2024. This is the third week in our 4-week long presentation. Of course, this is a distillation of what I share in the whiteboards for this class. So I will always encourage everyone, if you would like to get the full amount of what I have to share with you, please access the whiteboards. They're always more detailed than what I can share here verbally, even over the course of 3 hours. And you can go back and rewatch them many times, okay? So today we're going to talk all about the specifics of not only the process of photosynthesis, but also the process of combustion. In the process of photosynthesis, the ephemeral nature of energy that we know as light, that is in a flowing state, is then turned into or translated into what we perceive with our 5 senses as matter that we can touch, that has formfulness. It is a miracle, and we will go into the exact nature of how that happens regarding light as consciousness, consciousness as something that has an impact on the fabric of space-time, which is why I always call it the fabric of STC, space-time and consciousness. And we are also going to relate that to the fabric of space-time and consciousness changing and being warped and having an oscillative dance, for lack of a better word, in the process of molecular bonding. So get ready. I hope you did all of your exercises. I hope you did all of your carbo loading. I hope that you drank your electrolytes. I hope that you put on one of those heavy weightlifting belts, because you are going to work very hard today and do molecular chemistry. Please do not jump out the window. Please stay. You can do it, guys. I believe in you. You can do it. You can do it. And I'm going to make it super fun. And we're going to use lots of pictures. And I already prepared some of the whiteboards for this class already. All right. Aurelia says, bring it. I like that attitude. Very good. And yes, you might need to have a hot tea or some form of caffeine to help your brain. A hot drink with extra intelligence that will make you more intelligent. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let me begin with a little bit going through my notes. Again, if you see me looking over here, it's because I need to look at my notes in order to keep all of this straight. And something literally just went out of my head of what I wanted to talk about, but don't worry. So, that's what it was. Which whiteboards are we looking at for this today? If you have access to the recorded homeworks, what I call them, it is technically whiteboard number 5. That is all about photosynthesis. But when I recorded it, I did it literally in the middle of the night, and I said that it was whiteboard number 6. So don't listen to what my voice says. Listen to what I'm telling you now. You want whiteboard number 5. And let's first begin with whiteboard number 4, which has some critical questions that are not related specifically to photosynthesis, but that relate to everything that I'll present and everything that we will talk about today in our class. And I didn't thank you enough for being here. Thank you for being here. I'm so pleased to have wonderful, attentive students who are willing to be with me on this journey, because it's not for the faint of heart. You're doing great. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about energy as it relates to light and energy as it relates to matter. These are some overarching questions that we're just going to begin. Like when I send out my tendril of attention to learn more about something, I quest, I touch on things, I think about things, I consider things. These are some of my considerations that we will explore and discuss more as I share with you more of the specifics of what light is doing, what is light's behavior. So first, the question is energy finite or infinite? Your mind is already blown. You're like, I don't know. What do you think? All right. Okay. Is there an infinite amount of it? Let's talk about energy. Is it born? Is it created? Is it generated? Is it assembled or made up out of other stuff? Here are more questions. Does energy evolve? Meaning, does it gain wisdom? Does it experience time? Can energy experience time? Well, your brains are already liquefying. Let's go deeper. Does it learn? Is energy experiencing something as it is flowing through time that changes it, makes it evolve, grow more wise? Does it behave differently over time? Because energy and light, these are very similar, although not synonymous. And we are here talking about light as a presence. Those very same questions can be brought to relate to the behavior of light. Is there an infinite amount of light or a finite amount of light? Can light become more wise as it has experiences in the fabric of reality? Can it grow and evolve? And if so, under what circumstances, and what does this look like? Because if you go back to last week's class, I talked about the concept of the Big Bang. Now, you know also that I'm not a scientist. I don't play one on TV. I'm sorry. I get very silly, even at the beginning of class. I'm not a scientist. I don't self-describe as that. And I'm really only using the common vocabulary words and some of the common concepts that are available from your present level of objective materialism and science to be able to form a bridge or find a common ground to even talk about these concepts, okay? So I'm not a proponent of science, but it does talk about the initial Genesis event, which you described as the Big Bang, something that is a super, super, super dense beginning point with nothing around it, that then spontaneously expands and generates all of the circumstances that we have now in terms of creating both energy or light and matter and the things that we can even experience in the sensorium of our biological senses. And I also spoke about last week how you can use the Big Bang as an allegory for the literalism of your direct creation event in each moment of being alive, in each moment of observership, as every time you look at the world, there's a Big Bang. Because every time you perceive, you are creating that initial generation of matter. So one way of thinking about cosmology, the story of you and where did all this stuff come from, is an initial expansion event, notice the Big Bang, that happened eons, an uncountable amount of time ago, and that you're in the current after effects as the universe, in this case, one timeline, has cooled and organized itself, all right? But another equally valid perception of what the fabric of reality is doing is that through the moment of your conscious participation in reality, that you are godding as a verb, that you are connecting to and putting your energy into the responsive nature of a receptive and vibratory force field that is generative, and that co-creative partnership is what is giving rise to your experience of matter in each moment. And these are both useful and valid explorations of the phenomena that we find ourselves submerged within. These are cosmologies or narrative stories that we are utilizing on an intellectual level to be able to explain and describe the world that we have around us, and also to comprehend how to be more powerful in that world around us. This relates to these questions about whether there's an infinite amount of light or an infinite amount of energy, or whether it can expand or grow, because I told you about how if you think of it as an initiatory Genesis event, initially, all of the first atoms that were created were not bonded into complex molecules. They were just individuated atoms. And what I drew as my very complex, I'm joking, diagram from last week, I will not repeat it, is just a line, just a straight line across your screen. That's it. It's the magnum opus of my entire career, guys, a line. No, but seriously, what that represents is something here. Let me just grab a little card over here. Here's a little, oh, no, you got to mute yourself. I can't even deal with it. Okay. A little card like this, seen on edge. So this would be a simplification of the fabric of reality that I have described as being formful, having length, width, and breadth, spherical, not flat, two-dimensional like a plane, but that I simplify looking like a plane and looking like a flat playing card in order to give simplicity to these diagrams, which would be otherwise too visually complex to comprehend. But in those initial moments of the expansion into matter that we know or talk about as the Big Bang, it would look like the edge of a playing card, perfectly flat, none of those little gravity wells that we're going to be talking all about today. And why is that? Because it would be the cosmic infrastructure in a moment of total light. In this class, everyone, you're smart. You're like, I'm getting scared. You're smart, guys. What does light also, how can we also describe it? Anyone? Anyone? And you're going to say it with your little hand up. You're going to be like, light is also intelligence. Yes, it is intelligence. It's information. It's an organizational presence. It is data. And in the initial moments of the expansion and creation of matter, there was information everywhere, totality of information. In that totality of information, the light that was informing the structure of the cosmos basically talked to or directed every single atom and said, do not stick together with anyone else. So that is the shape of the cosmos when no atoms are sticking together with anyone else, a totally perfectly flat plane, all right? But then in order to have greater levels of molecular complexity, this fabric of space-time gets a surface change, the topology and description of its surface changes to create these tiny gravity wells that make it possible for atoms to, I call it smooshing together in very scientific language, for them to smoosh together and to create molecular bonding. That process of atoms joining together actually requires light, and it releases light. But this is one way that you can have more than infinity totality. So when this straight fabric is changed to have a bumpy surface texture, it is light that changes that fabric and makes little, I call them comfy chairs, little, we don't want to call them depressions because it makes you feel kind of depressed to think about that, but little gravity wells that these atoms can get into. Light is literally what reforms the fabric of space-time and consciousness. That is why I call it the fabric of space-time and consciousness, because it is recognized that in this expansion and creation of space, place, and matter, space and time were created, but science has described it as a dead, stupid thing, like the stupid fabric of your dress, and nobody cares about it. And I'm like, always like, and consciousness, space-time and consciousness, because you know what is the consciousness? The intelligence that directs how that fabric of space-time is being warped in order for molecules to be formed and come together. So you have to have light to make that happen. But in the process of molecules being created, light is emitted. Now, when I tell you this, you might feel that that is counterintuitive because you're going to say, no, Aurora, when I break the bonds, that's when light should shoot outward, as opposed to when bonds happen, that is when light is released. And just think of it like this, because it might be challenging for you to, internalize. I call them comfy chairs. Little gravity wells are like comfy chairs because when you get into the comfy chair, what happens? You go into a lower energy state. Like here I am running around, and they're like, I'm tired. I'm going to sink down into my comfy chair. And I'm going to get all slouchy and I'm going to rest down in a lower state. And then to get me out of my comfy chair, it takes energy. You need to have kind of like a momentum. The phone rings, something happens. It makes you jump up out of your comfy chair. All right. So when you as an atom or a molecule come together into those little gravity wells, you are going into a lower energy state causing the release of light. So it takes light to inform atomic matter that it needs to come together and go into this lower energy state. It requires light to do that. And then also that behavior of going into the comfy chair or the lower energy state releases light. But then in order to get those atoms in an unbonded state so that they can then bond in a new way, like to take those puzzle pieces and reform them into new molecular puzzles, you have to get them up and out of their little gravity wells. You have to, so if you sit down in your comfy chair and then your cat sits on top of your lap and then your dog sits on top of your lap and then your guinea pig sits on top of your dog's lap. And then everyone's in there and they're snuggling so nicely and nobody wants to get up. It takes a lot of energy to make everybody have to get up out of the chair. And when that happens, then the fabric of reality returns to its perfectly straight formation. So I want you guys throughout the rest of class today to begin using your envisionment in your imagination to start to consider the fabric of reality on a tiny, tiny, tiny scale, making these warbling motions. They make these little downward things, but then they straighten out. And as they straighten out, the molecules come up and out and separate. And then in their separated form, they are then ready to rearrange themselves and jump into even deeper, comfier couches and form even more complex molecular structures. This is what happens in the process of the creation of glucose in photosynthesis. So that was just a little bit from the whiteboard number 4. Whiteboard number 4 is very beautiful and philosophical. I'm not going to lavish that much attention on it because I want to make sure that I have plenty of time to be able to draw out these things. So before I move ahead too much, that's beautiful. Pedro says, wait, Mark says heavy lifting. That's what I'm here for. I love that attitude. And Pedro says, thank you, Aurora, for enlightening us today. You're so very welcome. It is my cosmic pleasure to do so. And literally, what we're doing is enlightenment, taking light, which is comprehension and information, and transmitting it to you. So thank you for receiving it. I'm very, very happy to do this. Melissa, and thank you for being here, says an important thing, infinite plus, infinity plus. That is exactly it. I started out with those questions from whiteboard number 4 because it is a big concept of like, I'm exhausted even thinking about this. Like, why do we even do this, Aurora? Like, why even have molecular bonding? And the answer is because you get more light out of the system. So you start off post Big Bang with this state of totality, light everywhere, information saturating everything everywhere. And then can you even have more light? The answer is yes. You can have more light, and you have more light by this process of the changing of the topology of the fabric of space-time and consciousness. So wait, Pedro says, is that how light slows down, by getting knowledge? I love your question, and I don't want to sound critical. My more accurate answer or more accurate way of responding is to reframe that question and to say that as light is on its journey, as light is on its path, the path of light, it gains knowledge through the process that it is undergoing. Light gains knowledge or additional wisdom or additional self-reflection or contextualization through its journey of creating the long narrative structures that I have drawn for you in animations that I shared with you previously, through the reclaiming of that information. So those long trailings that come outward and then shrink back inward in the solar presence or in the stars. These are wisdom experiences and thought processes of the stars themselves. And this changing and I want to say deformation, but let's call it warpage of the fabric of reality of space-time is also light becoming more aware of itself. So the changes in speed of light is light becoming more aware of itself, and increase in light. And also the changes in how that light sticks together as matter is light becoming more aware of itself. And then you can say, does any of this relate to me? Now I'm being like the scarecrow from Wizard of Oz. Does any of this relate to me? Like, yes, this totally relates to you, because you are light on a journey coming into embodiment, changing speeds, becoming more aware of yourself. And then your journey is to re-accelerate, which is what the ascension process is, which is what it is for you to be on the path of light and to re-attain light speed. So when light slows down, it is on a journey. That's not the end of the journey. You are light that is slowed down, but you're not at the end of your journey. You will also re-accelerate, and you have learned and achieved greater levels of wisdom through this whole process of becoming embodiment or physicality, structure, or matter, and then re-attaining light speed. Chris says, what is the relationship between light and sound? Is sound within light? What came first, light or sound? In terms of talking about what came first, because time hadn't been invented yet, it is a non-question that I cannot answer. I will say that sound is your five senses interpretation of what light is. Just like heat is a five senses interpretation with the tactile senses of what light is, it's a different level of radiation. Sound is not necessarily radiation, but it is light in the form of compression waves. So when you are listening to my voice, I am bringing light to you through the organized phonemes that my mouth parts are making. I am transmitting light to you via sound. All right, I hope that that answers your questions and makes sense. Michael S. says, does all energy light derive from the same source? What I've heard refers to as the one infinite creator. Yes, I would say so. I would say that light is a form of consciousness, that all is derived from that original infinity point that we can either talk about as the zeroth dimension, singularity, or the total compression of all possibilities of stuff. That is what science talks about as being at the genesis of the Big Bang experience. And Diane says, why would light choose to be embodied? Like, yo, Diane, I can relate. Well, I'm working hard. What am I doing here? Well, I have to do all this important, difficult stuff. Why do I even need to be embodied? And the answer is to become more wise, to increase more light. So I know you didn't ask about you becoming more embodied. You ask, why would light choose to be embodied? The answer is light goes on its journey, or light is on the path of light in order to get more light, because you can have something like infinity plus one or totality plus one. And that if you can have plus one, it means you can have plus five. And if you can have plus five, it means you can have plus infinity. So it means you can have infinity plus infinity. And if you can have plus one infinity, then you have plus two infinities. This is what we do in math in order to have fun. Chris says, thank you. Answer my question. Perfect. Good, good, good. And one more question. Melissa says, not sure how accurate, but I imagine that everything I experience is the light that enters my personal magnetosphere. I think that's a pretty good description of the human experience. Okay. All right. So now, thank you. I will get to more questions too, because now I put up my notes and I can't see what you guys are saying. Let's talk about photosynthesis. All right. Photosynthesis literally means light becoming stuff. A light beam comes from the sun in order to interact with a plant that has chloroplasts and become glucose. This relates to my teaching from last week, because I did that whole graph across your screen of the different states of matter, starting at one side with the super dense matter known as Bose-Einstein condensate, then moving from solid matter, which is what we are most familiar with, all the way up to a gas that if you then add more heat, light information, you go from a gas to a plasma, which is where the electrons are so agitated and running around, and there's so much that can be liberated into being free, independent electrons who can date whomever they want. That's what a plasma is. But key point, a plasma is still a relatively non-organized sense of light. It is not coherent light. The light is organized according to all these different vectors and planes. And when you have a beam, you have coherent light. And that means that all of the peaks and all of the troughs of the light waves are perfectly organized, and beams of light travel further than disorganized light, which tends to disperse. So you already have a beam of light, which is considered the most organized presence that we can have, the most conscious presence, or the most highest levels of intelligence in that graph that I shared with you. So this is light that already has an enormous amount of self-organization and intelligence, makes a choice. It doesn't just randomly come from a sun or a star and randomly become a part of a leaf, nor does the leaf catch it. Like, all these photons are whizzing by, be like, yoink, like, I'll take you, and you're going to become a part of me and kind of squash you inside of me. No, none of that. It's not random. It's not non-consensual. It is highly orderly and very intentional. The light makes a choice. So from now on in this class, I'm going to talk a lot about glucose. Why is glucose so important? Because that is the primary molecular container for light, consciousness, intelligence that we have in our world. In the process of photosynthesis, that highly organized and coherent beam of light doesn't fall on a leaf or get captured by a leaf. It has a beautiful, intentional interaction, a consensual partnership with that leaf, and it transforms into the molecular structure we know as glucose. I will give you the molecular chemistry equations of how this happens, and I'll teach you about the fabric of space-time, and you're going to love it. It's not going to be hard at all, okay? But then the glucose doesn't just remain as glucose. You guys might know glucose is synonymous with a type of sugar, and that sugar represents pure energy. And we have glucose in our bodies that is known as our blood glucose, or your blood sugar. That's absolutely essential for like your life processes, your cognitive processes, and so that you don't die. All right. So glucose is your friend, even though lots of people are on low sugar, low carb diets. Glucose is your friend. It's a miracle. And in the world of photosynthesis and plants, glucose is very important because not only does it fuel the biological processes of the plant, or I should say sustain and support the plant's biological and cognitive processes, glucose is put together into complex chains of molecules that then become a substance that is known as cellulose. And cellulose is the structure of plants. So in order for plants to become anything more complex than, let's say, a moss or something that just creeps along the surface of the ground, it needs to have, just like we have a skeleton that makes you erect and stand up. If you don't have a skeleton, you're an invertebrate. And what are you? You're like a pool of jelly. You're like a pool of goo, right? But skeletons allow us to create greater levels of complexity in the organism. Cellulose allows for greater levels of complexity in the plant world. You become more than just a little creeping, fuzzy green form on the surface of different substances. You become something like a blade of grass. I'm a blade of grass. Yoink, I stand up like this. Or a dandelion or a rose bush, or a giant redwood tree. All of these larger, more complex organisms in the plant world are made possible through the complex glucose strings that create cellulose. Therefore, light turns into glucose. Glucose is stored up light. Cellulose is also stored up light. And humans utilize cellulose when you are doing things like combustion, when you take a log of wood and you put it into your fireplace or you build a campfire. What you are burning essentially is the cellulose. You are liberating the stored sentience or light information that is in the structural formfulness of the plant matter itself. So cellulose becomes solidified light that becomes very, very relevant to humanity as you have a desire to liberate that light from its stored material aspect through the process of combustion. Okay, so that cellulose, that is light that's stored in the physical object known as a piece of wood, can be liberated through combustion, and combustion is pretty fast. Like if I asked you, like, how fast is a fire? You'd be like, it's pretty fast, like, whatever. It burns in an hour. But that cellulose can also be liberated through the process of oxidation, which is pretty slow, which is what you know as decomposition. If you buried a log, I'd be like, how long will it take for that cellulose to break down? I'd be like, a long time. Could be days, weeks, months, years, could be hundreds of years for a piece of wood to fully decompose. So that is the slower version of the liberation of light that happens from the breaking of these molecular bonds or transforming of the fabric of space-time, okay? So just to be very clear, there are three main pathways that light is liberated from matter. Combustion, oxidation, which is the same as decomposition. It's also the same as rust, and I talked about that last week. So you know it as rust when it's iron oxide, but if it's copper, then it's a patina, the green color on the Statue of Liberty. And then the final way that light gets liberated through the addition of oxygen is called cellular respiration. And that is what happens inside of your own body. And we're going to talk about aspects of that today as well. So in the rest of the class today, what I'm going to do is give you the molecular equations for how to turn light into glucose, but then I'm not going to do the opposite or complementary equation, which would be glucose back into light, because it's way too hard. Because it's so complex, it's like a 13-step process for that to happen. That is what happens internally with the process of cellular respiration. It's so complex. Like if you ever wonder, like, does God exist? Does a creator exist? Who invented the world? Just know, like, this is such a complex thing that happens in your body that is so non-accidental. My God, really, I'm not even exaggerating. 13-step process. So just for the sake of class, for the ease of being able to share these concepts, we're going to go with a simpler form of showing the journey of something from matter back into light. We're going to go with combustion at the level of natural gas, just because the equations are much, much easier. And I didn't want you to be totally intimidated. Let's begin also with just a little bit about scientific notation. You're like, oh, I'm already jumping out the window. Don't jump out the window, guys, just because I'm talking about equations and scientific notation. Okay, so in scientific notation, I will just draw this for you very fast. Here's one that you're already very familiar with. H, this represents hydrogen, 2, meaning there's 2 of them, and O representing oxygen. You're like, Aurora, we already know about this. Good. That's why I'm doing it, because it is not intimidating to you. In scientific notation, when you have a little number down here, that is a modifier that relates to this letter over here. H2 means that we have 2 hydrogens, and we don't have any number over here for oxygen because we just have 1 oxygen, so you don't have to put a 1 over there. But what if I put a 2 in front of the whole entire little phrase over here? If I do that, what that means is that I have 2 of these units. And then if I were to ask you, well, if I have 2 H2O, meaning I have 2 molecules of H2O, and I said, of those 2 molecules, how many hydrogen atoms do I have? You would have to say the number 2 over here times the number 2 over here. Class, what is 2 times 2? Aurora, we're very, very smart and we know our arithmetic times tables, and that is 4, correct. And so you would answer correctly. There are 4 hydrogen atoms in 2 H2O molecules, okay? And then the final thing is, let's talk about an equation in math and in science. If we have item, item, item equals item, item. The equal sign over here is a balance beam, like a seesaw. And everything, let me change colors so that you can kind of get this better. Everything that is over here on the equation must balance out and be equal to everything that is over here. So the equal sign becomes a transformation sign. And then sometimes in some of these sharings and equations that you'll see from me here, what you will see, especially in my notes, is several little arrows that look like this, arrow, 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 and that means transforms into. So the equal sign and the arrows mean virtually the same thing. It means there is a transformative process. So for example, in exploring photosynthesis, we'll have a bunch of stuff on this side over here that then transforms into a bunch of stuff on this side over here. All right, so that's that. Those are the basics of it. It's definitely, I think, straightforward, because I didn't want, like, we're talking about a new language here, so I want to give you the best start to be able to comprehend this new language. Okay, so now let's get into exactly how photosynthesis happens. Go to one of my existing whiteboards, and this is the one that I already have prepared for you. So I didn't, you this is how good I am to you guys, because I didn't want you to have to stand here or sit there while I am busy laboriously writing all of this out. I did this before class, okay? So in the process of photosynthesis, let me just pull up my notes and make sure that I am doing this correctly. Yes, let me write this for you. The chemical equation for, let me get the right color here. Sorry. I'm going to really work making sure that I've got the right colors for you, because that's really going to, I think, affect your comprehension. Glucose is C, come on, stupid thing, C6, H12. Let me just make sure that I've got that correct also. H12, yes. That's terrible too, but just go with it. And then O6. Okay, that is the magical molecule that is known as glucose. That's the goal of what we want to be making through this present transformative process that I'm going to teach and share with you all about. Okay, so first of all, wait. Let's just be normal and not even talk about science equations. In order to make plants grow, what do you guys need to do? You're all very smart. What do you need to do? You need to water your plants, all right? Water your plants. That's what all of this represents. H2O. This is what you need for plants to stay alive, okay? What's the other thing that you need for plants to stay alive? You're going to say, well, the stuff that's in the atmosphere, I don't have to give it to them, but it's already there. Correct. This is carbon dioxide, CO2. So I think you're already pretty familiar with the sense of H2O being the chemical shorthand for water, and CO2 over here is the chemical shorthand or science talk for carbon dioxide. And in order for plants to stay alive and photosynthesize, you need these two vital things. In order to do the process known as photosynthesis and come up with this molecule over here, you also need one more thing. And in all of this, if you read, like, a book about science or whatever, and it talks about photosynthesis, it kind of glosses over this. It says, well, yes, you will require carbon dioxide plus water, and then just throw in a little smear of light. Okay, so I'm just going to make a long, skinny waveform of light over here so that you understand like that. I mean, what I'm really talking about is each one of these little things is going to have its own little beam of light. We'll make 6 of them. Okay, so that you know that there's 6 little quotients of light over here. But so again, this class rather is called the path of light. And every single one of these little bits of light represents consciousness or sentience or awareness. So what science glosses over, it's just like, yes, throw in a dash of light and then it will, it all comes together. You recognize that this is non-accidental and it's not just random energy. It is important, specific energy that is added to this process in order to make this happen. This light over here represents that initial motivation that changes the fabric of space-time. And we'll get into that in the next whiteboard that I have prepared for you. So the very first thing that happens, first I'm going to show you over here with these types of letters and numbers, then I will show you with my new notation. But the first thing that happens is you have to unbond the C from the O2. So I'm going to draw a wall here, showing that like a knife, I'm cutting those guys apart. And so the carbon is unbonded from the oxygen. And these oxygens over here are then free they are liberated to be able to go fly off to where they want to go to. Because oxygen, when it is not bonded to carbon, it's just oxygen, the gas. So that's what these little guys over here, sorry for that bad drawing, but these little guys over here get split apart and unbonded. And then let's just show them flying away on their lovely journey of freedom. Bye-bye, they flew away. They're not there anymore, okay? So then, because what sorry. Let's rewind. Let's put him back there. Put him back there. This is important stuff because I want us to count. Let's do like Sesame Street version, like the count from Sesame Street. We can use an accent if you want to. Let's count how many oxygens are over here in this column. Remember, each one of these little twos means there's 2 oxygens. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, let's count these oxygens over here, every place where there's a little O symbol. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's look at this languaging for glucose. This little number down here tells us how many oxygens we need in this recipe. How many oxygens do we need in this recipe? We only need 6. Well, 6 is the exact number that you get when you add up all of these guys over here. So you have 6 oxygens over here. When you split these guys apart, all of these 12 oxygens are extras. You do not need these 12 oxygens to be a part of this new molecular structure. That's why you split them apart and they go bye-bye, because we don't need them for building what we're building. We only need the carbon. So that's why we erase these oxygens, say bye-bye oxygens, good luck, have a nice life, go fly off and do something else, okay? So now you have all of these beautiful pieces of carbon that are ready to bond with all of these hydrogens and oxygens over here to be able to make this molecule. This is another critical information. You have 12 hydrogens in this recipe. Let's count to see if we have the right amount of hydrogens. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's perfect. I want to say, hot diggity dog, hooray! That's perfect. We can make a miracle happen because we have exactly the right amount of everything. So once again, we need 6 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 hydrogens right there, and 6 oxygens, 6 oxygens right there. Plus, key point, a little bit of light in order to make all of this, make this. Got it? So you have you got rid of the oxygens that you don't need, and then all of this whole stuff over here that I'm scribbling over is going to get smooshed together, not just in one little comfy armchair, but in a giant comfy futon that is the futon of glucose. All right? Now, stop the whiteboard. Now go on to the next whiteboard that I have prepared for you. That's this one over here. Oh, I have a lot of them prepared for you. Get prepared. Get ready, everyone. Okay, good. So you're like, Aurora, what am I looking at? These look like bugs with antenna. No, these are not. This is my little shorthand. So now I just have to teach you about what my shorthand is. Just like when you learned about, my vortexes and other things like that. It might not be drawn perfectly, but you're super smart and you know what I'm talking about here. So just for being able to decipher what I'm saying here, here is that initial line that represents the fabric of reality when it's not molecularly bonded, okay? But when there's a molecular bonding, we have the line seen like from the cross section. Then here's a little comfy chair, a little gravity well. And then here's a giant comfy chair, right? And in order to show you what's going on in this diagram, I've simplified those little downward gravity wells to look just like a little incomplete vortex like this, okay? So when you see that symbol around here, this is, for example, this is one vortex. And I will be consistent throughout all of my sharings here and relate consistently to all of my whiteboards that when you see a black dot, this is so stupid, it should just go away. When you see a black dot, it's going to represent carbon. When you see a red dot, it's going to represent hydrogen. And when you see a blue dot, it's going to represent oxygen. And that is just going to be consistent throughout this sharing, and it relates consistently to everything that's in my whiteboards, all right? So now, let's just get a different neutral color. When you see this over here, let's just see if you can figure out what we're looking at. You see a carbon atom that's down in the snuggly comfy chair with two blue dots, and that represents two oxygen atoms. So class, what is the molecule that is one carbon plus two oxygens? It's carbon dioxide. Correct. It is carbon dioxide. So let's count up all of the carbon dioxides that we've got. This is exactly the same thing that I just showed you with letters and numbers on the previous screen. This is one carbon dioxide. Here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Same exact thing that I showed you before. Let me take this away so it doesn't get too confusing. And then let's also count out and confirm the presence of 6 molecules of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know, and we can laugh at my drawing because if you look at these molecules of water, you're like Aurora, like this looks like a fish with antenna and 2 red eyes. I'm like, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. But I appreciate this creative interpretation. You won the assignment. Very silly. No, it is 1 oxygen and the 2 dots are 2 hydrogen, making it H2O. So those are all 6 little molecules of water, all right? And this is the fabric of space-time and consciousness that has been dimpled into this present formation. The dimpling is itself an end result of light. So if I put a little bit of light there, that's showing that the reason why there are even these formations for these molecules to nestle into, like who built the furniture? Who built the comfy chairs? Light. Light built the furniture that these little guys go into. In order to create glucose, all of these little guys need to get up out of their comfy chairs. So let's erase those yellows so that you don't get too confused, because they're all in a lower energy state and you need to add some light to them to get them out of their low energy state so they can bond. This is the light that's like, ding, get up out of your chair, ding, get up out of your chair, get up out of your chair. All of these little guys are getting their little a motivation from light itself. You can think of it as, like a crowbar underneath someone, under their butt, making them stand up. But a more accurate way of thinking about it, like as this light enters into this, what it does is it makes this downward warpage and gravity well straighten out. You can imagine that layer getting kind of like ironed out by a giant cosmic, iron process. And so what ends up happening is these guys come up out of their comfy chair. Here is carbon over here, and then you're going to have 2 oxygens over here. And I'm going to have to erase these guys down in their lower energy state. So get ready, because all of these guys are getting up out of their comfy chair. Everybody's getting up. Light is making you get up. You cannot be in your lower energy restful state. Light is talking to you and saying, get up, you got somewhere to go. So let me draw all of those 6 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then let's draw all of those blue dots representing oxygen. Dot, 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 dot. And what happened in the previous screen when I showed you that knife that was cutting and separating the carbon from the oxygen? And P.S., let's just make these guys, oops. Let's just make these guys have, there's no longer these little gravity wells. So they are now on like a flat plane with no little comfy chair. We took away the comfy chair. But what happens to the oxygen when these 2 guys split apart? Remember, I drew a line and I showed you that they have been cut apart from one another. What happens to the oxygen? Oh, the oxygen flies away. Exactly. The oxygen flies away because it is not needed to create the molecule known as glucose. So we can erase these guys. We're going to erase these guys. Everybody got up out of the comfy chair, and the dog and the hamster ran away. This is the dog and the hamster running away. But the human remains. All right, human is carbon. All right, good. Good. And the same exact thing is going to happen with our H2O. The light is going to come along. I know this is a little laborious, but it's worth it for your mind. Light is going to come along and talk to every single bit of this water, and it's going to say, get up out of your comfy chair. Stop sitting on your ASS. Get up out of your chair and get unbonded. And so let us draw this. What ends up happening is you have up on the top surface, no longer sitting in the comfy chair, oxygen, 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 oxygen. All right. And then 2 hydrogens. These are now going to be perched on the upward surface. Upward surface. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And now let's erase these guys from their lower energy position, because they're not in the chair anymore. They're not in their low energy position. They're only in their, oops, we can erase the vortexes too, because we're going to draw straight lines, because those vortexes don't exist anymore. I have to use like all of my dexterity to be able to carefully erase these little guys. I'm doing it, guys. I'm doing it. I'm doing it for you. Believe in you. Okay, almost there. Very silly. Good. And let's draw a nice straight. We don't have furniture anymore because the light took away the furniture. The light's like, get up. You're not allowed to sit all day on your behind. Now you must be unbonded and be up out of that furniture. So now everybody's up out of the furniture. We have 6 carbons that are up out of their gravity wells. We have 6 oxygens that are up out of the gravity wells. And we've got 12 little hydrogen dots that are all up out of their gravity wells. And what's going to happen is here, I'll just draw another. We're going to make, this is the super deep futon. The super deep, comfy futon of glucose. And what's going to happen is all of these guys are going to jump down into the super deep, comfy futon together. We are going to have, I'm going to draw it for you because it will really help your mind to solidify this. We're going to have 6 of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means that we're going to erase them from up here because they're not up here anymore. They all jumped down into the giant comfy futon. And we're also going to get our 6 oxygens. They're all going to get down. They're like, it looks so comfy there. I think I'll be a part of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Please know that this is a loose allegory and is not correct. when you look at what the glucose molecule is actually shaped like, or glucose chains, if they're actually shaped like. So this is, I'm taking artistic license here, but just believe me on the concept of what I'm sharing. And then all of these little hydrogens, all 12 of them. So let's put them in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Awesome. And then erase the hydrogens from where they are over here, because they are not over here. They have all jumped down into the comfy couch of glucose together. Right? Good. So I think you've followed along very, very well in comprehending that. And the big takeaway is that this initial vortex shape here was the end result of light, translating into a straight, no longer divot, no longer dimple, is an act of light, requires light. And then getting all of those molecules to jump down into here also requires light. And then when they all jump down into the couch together, that is when they emit a whole bunch of light, So all of these processes require light. The fabric of reality here, I'll move back. Well, no, I'll leave this picture up so you can just absorb it a little bit more. The fabric of reality as it transforms from little tiny gravity wells into straight flat surfaces and then back into larger gravity wells, that is an act of light. So, or a motivation of light. So one of the big takeaways is that light and gravity have an interrelationship. All of these chairs and futons are gravity. It is gravity that causes these little guys that are atoms to come together into the more complex bonding molecular structures that are known as molecules. And I also didn't say enough that I've drawn these in simplification and in a cross section, but what is really happening is something that is spherical. So now I'll go back to me so I can kind of gesture and show this to you as a sphere. So for the ease of sharing, I showed it as if it is a cross section with these little, downward facing gravity wells. But really, what you are experiencing is something that is spherical. Just like I told you about the energy of a very heavy star that is causing the fabric of space-time to kind of create a gravity well and go down slightly. It is not just like the floor, like there's a lump in the bottom of the floor, because that's what your mind might think by looking at those simplified drawings. But that really what you're looking at is all directions crushing inward, every direction crushing inward for a star. And same thing for these little tiny molecular maneuvers, that it's not just something where it's like there's a bed sheet that gets wrinkles or gets ironed out. That's simplification for you to comprehend things. It is really a spherical deformation in the fabric of space-time. So initially, you have a small spherical deformation with, H2O at the center of it. And then in order for that to be unbonded, that deformation or warpage has to be smoothed out by light, liberating the hydrogen and the oxygen so that they can be free, so that they can then get into an even deeper, that's the giant photon, deformation or dimpling or warpage of the fabric of space-time and consciousness along with these other molecules. So these are spherical deformations, not something that's flat on a plane or like a golf course is what I used as my initial sharing in the original course materials, like, little places where the balls go into in the golf course. That's not accurate, but it kind of helps your mind to think about this. So that is the process of how light becomes matter. And the matter is known as glucose, all right? And when you're driving along, always pay attention to the road. But if you have extra energy to be able to think about cool stuff, just look at all of these trees and all of this greenery, even simple blades of grass that are all on the sides of the road, even weeds and dandelions and things like that. And just know that on a molecular level, what is happening is a very, very complex dance. Just like I showed you, the star that is emitting these different long lines of narratives that make up the path of light for photons, those photons and light itself is creating a constantly changing and shifting fabric of reality that makes little tiny gravity wells, then clears out those gravity wells, and then makes even deeper gravity wells, and then liberates the light that is in those deeper gravity wells by new processes. So if you ingest glucose, glucose is all of these guys in the down futon snuggle snuggling together, your body will get all of these cats, dogs, hamsters, and people out of their comfy futons and break them apart and liberate that light energy so that it becomes available to you for biological processes. It's so complex. It takes like 13 stages and is very, very difficult to, it's not simple and easy to comprehend. So when we're talking about the opposite side of this journey, which is going from embodiment matter into the phenomenon of optical light, we're going to use something more simple, which is methane or natural gas, and show how that process of combustion happens. Okay, so Melissa also questions and says, when light instructs microbes to, what does this say? Oh, hug each other. I can't read, and it's sometimes so annoying because there's something over your words. I can't read what it says. Microbes to something each other in an organized way. It allows the crystallized formation of minerals. Sure. A more accurate way of saying this is that light is the information that informs molecules that are individual atoms to come together in a form of regularity that is known as a crystal that is made out of minerals. So if we used carbon as an example of that, light would inform carbon to structure itself in these very regular formations that would make carbon either graphite, or there's a pencil. I don't have a pencil, but that's what pencil lead is. Or if it got organized even a little bit further into a diamond, let's pretend this is a diamond. I just happen to have a giant diamond sitting around, guys. This is technically a Herkimer diamond, which is quartz, but it is light that speaks to or informs the individual atoms and tells them stand shoulder to shoulder in this regular form, and that will create, you will be created as a crystal. But the light doesn't talk with words the way that I do. It speaks with those little tiny gravity wells. It speaks with its formfulness. So I hope that answered your question, because I wasn't talking about microbes. But if I didn't, just ask me more follow-up questions and I'll get to it. Let's get to the next whiteboard, which is, this is not the right, okay, that's it. That's it, class is off. I'm kidding. No, I pressed the wrong button or something happened. I want to go to existing whiteboards. Good. And I want to go to this one. Yes. Good job, me. You're like, here's more of those strange antenna beings. No. All right. Now let's make sure that we get this correct, because now we want to talk about methane. And methane is CH4. Let me draw it for you. No, yes. You have no idea what I have to press so many buttons in order for anything to happen around. You have to press so many buttons. Wait, I'm gonna make sure I can kind of see my notes while I'm doing this too. It's hard, so I have to do this. No, press a button. Just press a button, and now I can finally see what I'm trying to do over here. Easy, guys. CH4, methane, because I have to X this out, and I have to X this out. I have to make this room. I'm very complaining right now. C, and then we'll say H is always going to be in red so that you can decipher this effectively. CH4. right? Good. That's what methane is. Methane is 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens. That's what you've got over here. 1 blue circle, which means 1 carbon, and 4 small dots, which means 4 hydrogens. And they are all down here in the comfy chair together. Now, I will challenge you slightly. Can you tell what molecule this is over here? Blue is oxygen. You're smart. You know what it is. It's 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogens. It's H2O. Good job. Okay, good. So let's write it properly over here. H2, meaning there's 2 hydrogens there, and then O. Good. Okay. Let me just do a little bit more, because this is going to be an equation for you with those wild arrows that go over to the side, right? And it goes into, hold on, we'll get there. Oh, I promise you we will get there. Like, we're bored. Okay, class, I promise you we're getting somewhere with this. CO2 plus, oh, I did it wrong. You're like, that's it. Now I'm really jumping out the window. It's supposed to be O2. O2. But that doesn't look right at all. It doesn't look like a 2. Let's try it again. But it's not just 2 O2. It's not just 1 O2. It's actually 2 of these O2s. All right. I'll read this all out to you when I have everyone. When I get everything together, I will read it all out to you. Carbon dioxide plus, now we'll do H2O. That's not the right color, and I swear I pressed the right button. That's not fair. I call foul. That was not fair. H2. Get it. Just celebrate, everyone, because that was so hard, but it happened. Okay. This is the basic equation for how methane plus oxygen gets burned. That's what this is, transforms or combusts into carbon dioxide plus water. This is, if you look in a science notebook, not exactly how they will delineate it for you, because they'll say methane plus oxygen plus a little bit of light. So we'll just make a little bit of yellow scribble here. Transforms or turns into carbon dioxide plus water plus a lot of light. You're scaring us now. Yes, I am scaring you. Let's talk about how this process occurs. Because this is literally what I do in the morning. I have natural gas. When I put my kettle on in the morning, I put the water into the tea kettle, and then I turn on the gas that's on my stove. And then what do I have to do? Will my tea kettle get hot if I just turn on the gas, everyone? You're like, no, Aurora, that will be actually a very, very dangerous thing to do. If you just turned on your gas, but didn't do this critical next step, you would just fill your kitchen with a form of gas that would either suffocate you or possibly cause an explosion. So that would not be safe. Class, what do I need to do in order to make this transformative experience? And you're very smart, and you're going to say, Aurora, you have to ignite this. You have to either have a match or a little spark to make this go. That's what this little amount of yellow means. The spark or the match is light. It is intelligence. It is a small amount of energy that is required to tell these guys, get up out of your chair And also to tell these guys, you also need to get up out of your chair, and you also need to get up out of your chair. And then to remove the chairs from existence, so these become straight lines instead of vortexes. And then the light creates 3 new formations that end up being the new molecular formats for these same puzzle pieces that come into a new, I keep using that word, format or shape. But in that new shape, there's also a lot of light and a lot of heat that happens. So this is the essence of what it is to make a small energetic investment and then receive back a huge amount of light. You guys are already feeling like very comfortable with this because you're like, well, yeah, like we do this. You take a small spark from a match or something like that, causes a giant bonfire. You're already very familiar with this concept in your tactile realm. Now we're talking about it in the sense of light being a motivator or an initiator or a consciousness experience or expression that leads to the generation or the emittance of more light. When you add light to the CH4 methane molecule, what ends up happening is you're going to have one carbon who's over here, and then you're going to have your 4 hydrogens, 1, 2, 3, 4, that are over here. And so we're going to erase them. They are not down here in the comfy chair anymore. And we can even erase the comfy chair. Comfy chair doesn't exist. And then we're also going to say, well, what's going to happen to oxygen? Oxygen is similarly going to split itself apart. And you're going to, again, over here, you have 2 O2s. So that means that you actually have, oops, I didn't draw this correctly. You have 4 O2s. I'm sorry, guys. Let me make this correct because you don't have, I drew this as water. Wait, go back. Now you're getting inflamed and angry. Don't get inflamed and angry, guys. I swear, I just made a mistake. This is supposed to look like this. O2, not H2O. It's supposed to be O2. So what does that mean? It's supposed to have 2 blue circles, 2 blue circles. All right. So O2, 2 blue circles. That is 1 oxygen molecule. And we have 2 of them, right? 1, 2. So that means altogether I have 4 oxygens. And when you look at this side of the equation, how many oxygens do we need? I have 2 that will be required over here and 1 that will be required over here. So we will need some of our oxygen, but not all of it, okay? So of these 2 oxygens, we're going to get them out of their comfy chair. We're going to have 1, that doesn't even look like an oxygen. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Let's erase their chairs and erase these guys from their lower energy state. And now these guys are all ready to bond into their new format of what it's going to look like. Everybody's going to arrange and do-si-do into some new and exciting formats. And I didn't do this exactly right. Hold on a second. Should have done this better because this is CO2 plus 2 H2O, meaning I have 2 things of water. And that will actually mean that we will use all 4 of our oxygen. Sorry, let's count again now that I have changed and made this correct. Over here, you have 1, 2 oxygen. That's 1, 2. And then over here, you have 2 single oxygens. That's also 1, 2. So actually, none of our oxygens go away. We use all of our oxygens. And I will show you what this looks like and how this behaviorally comes together. So, okay, just mind gelato, have a sorbet. You've just put this little spark of light into the beginning of the process of combustion, meaning that you've got your carbon over here, your hydrogen over here, and your oxygen over here, and everybody is unbonded, and they're all liberated and looking for their next formats of how they're going to bond together. And what they're going to do is your carbon is going to become part of this CO2 molecule over here. So here is one carbon, and then let's draw the two O2s that connect to it. Here's one and here's one. All right. So let me show you the vectors of what that looks like. This carbon comes down to here, and this oxygen comes down to here, and this oxygen comes down to here. I'm going to erase those lines so you don't get very confused. But now I'm going to show you. So we have this guy's taken care of, this guy's taken care of, and this guy's taken care of. And then you guys are smart. I can see the way your minds are already working, because now you still have this for hydrogens that you have to take care of. That's this over here, 2H2. And then you also have two oxygens that are going to be taken care of. That's these guys. So let's show you where they end up going. Your two oxygens dive down here, and your two hydrogens become a part of that. Hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. And so I'm going to show you with yellow so that your mind can comprehend this. Two of these guys jump into here. And then two of these guys jump into here. And then this guy jumps over here. And this guy jumps over here. And that means that we can erase all of these, all of these, and all of these. And everything's been accounted for. That means the equations balance on either side, but we didn't do this final last thing, which is to signify that out of this process of these molecules jumping into their deep, beautiful, comfy chairs together, more light is released, more energy is released. And I'm using yellow in order to show optical light, but let's also use little pieces of red to show infrared, because out of this you get heat. So what happens when I boil my water in the morning? Yes, I see a blue flame. That is the optical light that comes as a result of this transformation of the fabric of space-time. But then you also get red, which is the heat. That is the addition of light information to my water to make it more intelligent, So this light heat energy goes into the water as a result of this combustion experience, and it makes the water more intelligent. It is greater levels of intelligence that's happening. So when this process happens from a straight line into a comfy chair, and then the release or liberation of light, that is a thought process. The light that is motivating this to happen is non-random, and the light that is emitted is similar to a cognitive process in your own neurology that makes you think or feel what we call an aha moment. When you're like, aha, I comprehend something, or I see or know something new. Literally, when we have an aha moment, we use as a shorthand, as a cultural shorthand, the concept of a light bulb. The light turns on and you have a new idea. This process represents the fabric of space, time, and consciousness having a new idea. And that new idea is the energy that then is transmitted or translated to whatever, your water that's in your tea kettle, or, whatever, your rice that you're trying to cook, or whatever it is. It is a cognitive event. Science describes these things without using consciousness or without recognizing and the validation of a consciousness event that is happening. But what I'm trying to get across to you is that this is consciousness event, It involves light on every level, or is motivated and directed by light, which is awareness and self-directed sentience at every single process, and that it ends up emitting more light into the environment and making the environment more intelligent. I'll go back to my face so I can kind of gesture here. So what I'm trying to get across is that just as I showed you that animation of the path of light, strings of reality, or convolutions of the surface of the fabric of space-time on a gigantic, magnificent scale that happens at the level of a star, that represents a type of oscillation, thought processes, cognitive processes, self-awareness, and exploration of different refinements of reality. The same exact thing is happening on the tiny level of molecular structure. As molecules come together, as atoms come together in molecular forms, that's a cognitive event. Then as they temporarily split apart and then come together into even bigger, more complex forms, that is another cognitive event. And when that happens, it is representative of an aha moment on the larger level of the macroscopic consciousness that we know as the fabric of the universe that we live within. So this becomes very, very profound. This becomes more profound than just like, I'm thirsty in the morning. I think I'll make myself a cup of tea or whatever. And I put the kettle on, like my eyes aren't open. I'm not even awake. I'm just putting the kettle on. Like this is unconscious. When you are conscious, you're like, wow, water itself, the bonding of the hydrogen and oxygen molecules that make up water itself represents a storage or an expression of the concept of light or information. And then I put that amount of information on top of my methane, which I then add a small amount of light information to in order to create a larger molecular event known as combustion that then releases a larger amount of information into my water, which is already pretty intelligent, making it dance or move around in molecular patterns that's known as heat, making it more intelligent. And then I drink it, and then I become more intelligent because I am ingesting more light. And when I say I'm become more intelligent when I drink my coffee, like I'm not just talking about the effects of caffeine on my neurology, because caffeine does make you feel kind of more smart, but I'm really talking about greater levels of intelligence. When you heat your water, when you heat your food, when you make soup as opposed to just eating something raw, you are adding levels of intelligence to it. Very, very good. So wait, I want to get to my key points and go to any questions or comments, and we'll keep going with this. Okay, so the release of light that has been stored in its physical existence through becoming a part of the gas known as methane. Then in the process of combustion, there's the release of the optical light plus the heat, the molecular dance pattern that is the expression of light. But the key point is that a small amount of light or self-awareness and sentience and consciousness is required to initiate that expression. And then in that molecular expression and rearrangement of the puzzle pieces of matter, more light comes out. So this speaks to these concepts of like, can you have infinity? Can you have infinity plus one? Can you have more than infinity? As matter is having this reciprocal dance with light in the cosmic infrastructure, more light is being created and generated. This is why you just don't have a continuum of light with no matter and no transformations back and forth between these different states. That would be a less intelligent circumstance, because you have these different flow states, some of which are light that is flowing and some of which are light that is not flowing and is frozen or sequestered in the form of matter. You have greater levels of complexity, which is greater levels of light. So key points are the idea that when these atoms are jumping from their neutral state, which is where the fabric of space-time is straight and not kind of dumped down, and then they jump into their next bond, that is when the light or the intelligence is released. I know. So light is liberated in that moment. You start off with the cosmic infrastructure with no atoms are bonded. Then, as atoms bond and begin to form these beginning complex molecules, even something that seems ubiquitous like water, light is released. Okay? And that represents an aha moment. It's a thought in the mind of God. God is literally thinking, like, what if I invented some water? Hydrogen and oxygen come together in that thought structure. The light that is released is the aha moment of thinking about water. And you can even play with this thought structure too. When I talk about God, I do not have to be referring to an externalized deity. I can be referring to you in your consciousness presence as you are interrelating with the generative force field. That is what the process of God as a verb is. You are having that aha moment. You are the universe or the cosmic infrastructure having that aha moment, thinking or manifesting into being the substance that is known as water, the basic building block of life. It's a new thought pattern. So it's not that you're even taking random molecules or random atoms of hydrogen and oxygen and just randomly slap those puppies together, get some water. No, these are very specific couplings. For example, I'm holding up a glass of some hydrogen and some oxygen bonded together. But there's also hydrogen and oxygen just floating around like gases in the atmosphere. What is the difference between these two things? Some of these things are floating around as individual gases. And some of these things have gotten together into their comfy chairs or comfy futons and created molecular bonds and are creating this substance known as water. These are not random. These are expressions of divine intelligence. It is not random when light interacts with a plant and becomes a part of glucose. And it is not random when some aspects of matter become, sorry, something is making a noise. I got confused. When some aspects of matter become water. And then also, I think you can see from all of these different chemical expressions here, water is a huge aspect of molecular chemistry as it relates to the supporting of biological life. So your water and also the availability of oxygen. I talked about that briefly in class last week. In order for you to have a world that can sustain the complexities of life that we know as biological life, you have to be able to have these various different processes that go on, all of which involve liberated, available oxygen in order to have both cellular respiration, combustion, and the processes of oxidation or decomposition. All of those involve the adding of a freely available oxygen molecule to the other molecules, and then the liberation of light that has been sequestered into its matter form. If you lived in a frozen world where there was not enough heat, light, intelligence, molecular dancing for oxygen to be in its gaseous state, if it was only in its frozen state, you could not have these thought processes in the mind of God. God would literally be like, you know something? I cannot think of your respiration or combustion because this oxygen is frozen and I cannot make that happen because I'm sorry, the words are failing, because there's not enough, you need light in order to make light. There's not enough light in a frozen world for you to be able to make the light that happens from combustion. Because I want to be like that cigar chomping guy. Like, hey, kid, you got to spend money to make money. Like, these are old, like, business aphorisms, which is true. You got to spend money to make money. Like, you got to buy equipment and other stuff like that. Don't be too literal. I'm very silly. But in the world of molecular bonding, if you don't have enough heat that makes it possible for these molecules to even be able to shift in their format and shift in their contextual relevance of how they are positioned in time and space, then you cannot have the greater expression and exploration of light. So you start out in this world with a certain quotient of light, and then through the interactions and greater levels of complexity of what that light is doing as it becomes formfulness and matter and then returns back into light, if you didn't have a certain amount of light, you couldn't explore all of this. You wouldn't have enough light to even make more light. So it is kind of a comparable analogy. Like if you only have $5, that is not enough money to be able to start a business and one day have $500 or $5,000. In order to start a business, you have to start out with some amount of information, raw ingredients, capacities. Let me get to your questions over here, but I have more notes to go through, but let me get to your questions. Okay. Michael says, the social memory complex says diamonds are frozen light. Is that accurate? And if so, does that light require liberation? Diamonds are absolutely frozen light, as all formful matter that we are experiencing is or are frozen light. And that light does require liberation or can be liberated here's a big question. My shoulders go up. Like, is your goal to liberate all light? Do you have to have the liberation of all light? Do you have to have a meta liberation of all light everywhere for whatever purpose, for whatever is your desired goal? So wait, I'll ask those rhetorical questions, then I'll respond to them. And Michael also goes on to say, also, I don't know if you or your collective, my Aurora collective, consider the social memory complex to be a technology. I think I was told that the other night, or perhaps it was due to the giving technology to our planet at different points in our history. I'm not sure how to answer that because I don't know how to define the social memory complex and whether that is a technology. So you have to give me more meat and potatoes on your question before I can respond to that more. But I'll delve deeper into my rhetorical questions and my response to the first part of your questioning, because I like how you're like sending out your tendril of attention, like touching on things and trying to figure things out. Okay. You don't have to turn all matter back into light in order to be liberated on your own journey of the path of light. But wait, I'm going to hop off my thing here for a second so I can grab my little sculpture, because I need to talk to you about singularity, not the transhumanist singularity. And I know my sculpture had a boo-boo. It's not perfect anymore. But I'm talking about this central convergence point right here. This is singularity. This is the overlapping of all levels of possibilities, probabilities, timelines. It's the source of information and the destination of where all information travels to. And where we are on our journey as embodiment creatures, we have been emitted from this place of total potential and total accelerated, fast movingness into our present level where we are not totally accelerated. And it is our goal as individuals and as tiny quotients of light to re-accelerate ourselves back to light speed and beyond, and to re-inhabit this area of space-time. When we do that, we do not have anything around us that is not moving at infinity speed. To speak in positives, we only are surrounded by infinity and infinity speed when we are at infinity speed. When we are at infinity, all that exists is infinity moving at infinite speed. Have you ever been in a car that is a parked car, and then the car next to you starts to pull out and you see it through the corner of your eye and you think that you're moving forward? This is the concept of relevant context. Like, speed is really only experienced as a comparison to how fast other things are moving. So when that car pulled out, you were like, am I moving? No, you're not. You're standing still. That guy's moving backwards. How about if both of the cars are driving down the highway at the same speed? Does it look like the other car is moving? The answer is no. And I've had that very weird experience where you're like driving along at 55 miles an hour, and the guy next to you is at 55 miles an hour, and you just drive that way for 10 miles, and you're like, you're both kind of standing still, even though you're both moving at 55 miles an hour, because relative to one another's context, there is no motion. Got it? What if you're not just next to one car that is moving 55 miles an hour? What if you're next to every single car in existence? And what if every single car in existence is not just moving at 55 miles an hour? What if everyone is moving at light speed plus? We'll just say light speed or faster than light speed, infinite speed. If that is what you are experiencing, then you literally have nothing to compare yourself to in order to say, I am moving faster than. Like you're moving the same rate as everyone else who is also moving at infinity speed. And there is nothing around you that is not moving at infinity speed. That means that all you are experiencing is the totality state of all existence that is moving at infinite speed all around you. And this is really what the concept and the profound nature of what flying rainbow lasagna is. What I'm really talking about in this deep teaching is that some aspects of either consciousness or matter or light will go to entropy. In last week's class, that was this area all the way at one side of your screen, the Bose-Einstein condensate. This is the formfulness of matter when all energy is removed from it. So right now you're comprehending that there is a continuum of light. Light that is moving, light that is matter. That means it has some movement, like even a little bit of molecular movement. Like this is me pretending to be molecules. Like I'm not dancing that fast, but I'm dancing a little bit, right? And then there's some molecules that are dancing really, really fast. But that's matter. Like it's like I'm moving a little bit. And then, of course, back to light speed again. But when you have matter that is not dancing at all, it is just totally frozen. It means not only does it not have any internal movement, so the atoms and molecules inside of that matter are not moving or dancing amidst themselves at all, but it also has no movement through time. And so that means that it has no movement relative to its context. Molecular movement is, in this case, synonymous with movement through time. So this sculpture that I share in class all the time represents the shape of time. This represents the total convergence point of all timelines. When you are at this point, which is the source and also your destination, you are at a being state, a feeling state of existence that you are infinitely fast. If you have zero energy, which would be the antithesis of that feeling state or existence state, if you have zero energy, then you are not moving at all. Not only are the molecules that you have not moving internally, but you are not moving through time. So it's not like I'm like, see you suckers, like, you know, like I'm moving super duper fast, going along on my journey, on my path of light, but then there's everyone else who's not moving at all. They're a Bose-Einstein condensate, and they're going to be like this. They're going to be like, frozen, frozen, frozen. No, you would not have that experience at all. You would not be like whizzing past, you know, these frozen beings and kind of gloating about how fast you're going while they are going super duper slow. No, they would not be in existence. They would not be. That was correct languaging. They would unbe and they would non-exist. This is very, very big stuff. When you take all light or all energy away from a formfulness of matter, it doesn't just get super cold and stop moving. It ceases to exist. You need some amount of heat, light, intelligence just to be able to exist moving through time. Remember the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. Those lines that I show in the animation as you have the sun star and the singularity, and you have a ballooning outward of the convolution of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. If you have no heat and you have no movement, you don't have one of the key ingredients to make that big giant loop, which is time. No movement through time. So in all of this, I hope it is getting across to you that there is no comparison when you are in a totality state of being at infinity and at light speed. Everything is at infinity and is at light speed, and you are not experiencing or having any level of comparison to anything or anyone that is not at light speed. And there are a lot of things that are not at light speed. That is the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna as it represents entropy. So entropy is the non-existence state of some light, energy, or matter that should not exist and does not exist and does not experience or move through time. And so when you reach these levels of attainment, you will simply be at your levels of attainment with everyone and everything else that is similarly at that level of attainment, but you will not interact with or have any knowledge of or comparison to that which has not reached that level of attainment. That is a really, really deep teaching that relates to what victory will feel like to you in this level of, challenge that you're facing, but don't try to be there prematurely. So the flaw or the folly of a lot of people who are in the community of spiritual seekers right now, who are on this journey towards attainment, is that they are prematurely trying to be at unity consciousness and say, everything is me and everything is at infinity speed and everything is infinitely divinely connected. And that's only true when you are at this state of fast movement and totality, infinity. When you are at infinity, it is true. You are at light speed. You are on the path of light. You are 100% connected to all light everywhere, because the truth is light is not separate and discrete. Light is a continuum. So light is in a flow from point A to point B. Light is in a flow through time. Light is in a flow from being ephemeral and non-physical and non-formful to being matter, which is physical and formful, to being non-physical and non-matter again. But light is not, or energy or consciousness is not, that which it is not, which doesn't exist. Because when I say those words and you're like, Aurora, now I'm angry and inflamed because those words don't make sense. I know that the words don't make sense because our language is not meant to describe that which doesn't exist. But you have to know that you can't identify with and bring into your personal boundaries that which does not exist, because in the moment of attainment, that stuff will be non-existing. If I bring it inside of my boundaries, like my arms and my encirclement here represents my boundaries, and I'm like, everything is me, everyone is me, come on in for a hug, everything, including that which doesn't exist. And then I, in my boundaries, get up to light speed. I cannot bring up to light speed that which does not exist, because it cannot be accelerated to light speed. Only that which exists can be accelerated to light speed. So therefore, only a certain quotient of what you see and experience in the world around you will re-attain or be accelerated to light speed, and a certain quotient or amount of what you see around you cannot be accelerated to light speed, and you will not experience it when you experience infinity, totality state, and moving to light speed. And that stuff will, not only will you not experience it, so it's not like it's going to be like, like you're not experiencing me, but I'm sitting here anyway and being in existence. It won't be in existence. You will not experience it because it will not be in existence in any way for you to interact with. So that also means that you're not going to have to limit yourself and be like, I better not fly over there because there's something that I shouldn't interact with. Maybe it doesn't exist and I shouldn't interact with it. You don't have to be that way. You literally, when you're at light speed and on the path of light, claim and can expand into the totality of everythingness everywhere. There is no place that you shouldn't go. There is every place that you should go. There is a saturation of all light everywhere, because the things that aren't light and can't or shouldn't exist have not accelerated to the point of light, and you will never encounter them. You will only ever encounter light and that which should exist. I know that there's got to be a lot of questions from that. The languaging was torturous. I hope that the information got through. Pedro says, now I'm really glad I live in a desert zone with all this excess light and heat. Yeah, absolutely, Pedro. So no offense to anyone who lives in the far north or, Sweden or something like that. We've got some wonderful class members that are from Northern Europe, but the weather conditions there are very cold, and there is less heat light intelligence to be able to support life and biological processes. You're like, duh, Aurora, we know that. It's very, very hard to live in Sweden, and you need to have a giant parka and boots and all sorts of things, technology to keep you warm. What about a time before technology was invented, like parkas and boots? What happened? People lived mostly in places that already had enough heat light intelligence to sustain them, and that definitely would agree with any time when humans did not have access to the ability to simply generate fire or a spark to keep themselves warm. Like if you can't make a fire on demand, hi, good to see you, and but please mute yourself. And if you need to get warm and you live in someplace frozen, then you are totally out of luck. All right. But if you live someplace tropical and warm, or like the desert, then every day you have the consistency of having access to plenty of heat that will sustain your biological processes. And the heat that is in your environment will also sustain key processes in the soil, so that plants can grow and create the miracle of glucose via photosynthesis. If you live someplace like Sweden, again, I'm not down on Sweden. I'm sure it's a very beautiful place, and the aurora borealis is visible there in the night sky. But it's cold. You're going to freeze your ass off, and you can't grow a lot of food in the middle of the winter. There is not enough heat light intelligence to perform photosynthesis. So now, because I'm speaking about things that, of course, are simple common sense. You're like, yes, you cannot grow food in the winter. Duh, Aurora. I'm like, yes, in the teaching of this class, what that means is that there is not the basic quotient of heat light intelligence necessary to be able to create more life-sustaining and intelligence expanding food to be able to keep you moving through time. When you ingest food, what's happening is you're adding energy to yourself so you can keep moving through time, so that you don't go to entropy. All right, Pedro says, too much enlightenment and work. Can't focus on the class. I'll have to travel back in time, watch the archived class, get it all. Thank you very much. And yes, this is definitely heavy lifting, so it might not be that easy to multitask and think about what I'm teaching about even while you're doing other things too. That's why I archived the class. All right, so don't worry, we'll always make it available to everyone. And Michael S. says, thank you for the response and the wisdom. I was speaking of Ra, a channeler, which when channeled in the 80s says to be approximately 450 million souls in the density of non-duality, which they said was 6 density. I already can't move onward. I'm already inflamed because we're talking about density. And I'm like, I don't have a ability to talk about density because it's not dimensions, and it is a subjective word to talk about people's different levels of perception and their feeling states. So I don't have an effective way to be able to talk about density. But moving onward, in your comment says, social memory complex being a collective of individuated mind, body, spirits who are not veiled and thus share thoughts as one, like you've mentioned. I believe your collective could be referred to as a social memory complex. I was asking specifically if you or your collective considered raw a technology. I do apologize for the limits of my language if I'm adding confusion. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. I don't know about Raw that wrote the channeled materials from the 80s, but I will say I am super skeptical of all channeled materials, and I'm specifically skeptical of the raw materials, even though people are like, don't touch my sacred cows, but I'm going to poke your sacred cows, girl, because of this reason why. Haven't read the entire Raw, I'll call it the Raw blah blah, but in the end, it talks about the harvest. That's why I'm skeptical, because I actually think that most channeled materials do not come directly from higher intelligences at all. I think they come from CIA mind control programs, that people are mind controlled. They think they're talking to aliens or otherworldly beings, but they're really just talking to a bunch of stupid intelligence agents from our world who are trying to control people. They're just trying to control, limit, and inhibit spiritual attainment, and also to groom humans for their masters, because I think that the CIA and many other organizations on the planet are working for malevolent consciousness reducers and those who wish to exploit humanity. So my skepticism comes from the sense of, you go through this whole thing, Raw and the law of one and all these different things, and then you get to the final chapters that's like, oh yes, and if you do blah 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 correctly, then you will experience the blah 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 consciousness harvest. And I am skeptical anytime any literature ends in consciousness harvesting. Same thing with the Bible, because you're not supposed to go anywhere. The idea of consciousness harvesting, you're going to be like, fly off in a metal spaceship, or get lifted up into Jesus's heaven, or, the consciousness harvesting, or whatever it is, Pleiadians, or, some supposedly advanced civilization that's going to come here and somehow take you out of this reality and bring you to a promised land or a better place. And I am not talking about that. And I am hugely skeptical, because what I think that is bringing you into a consciousness cul-de-sac, taking you as a prisoner, reducing your freedom, and maybe even cutting short your journey. From where I come from and everything that I promote and share with you guys, the journey of wisdom and attainment is a journey in freedom. Light is a continuum that flows. It flows in the form of light, and it becomes matter, and it becomes consciousness, and it becomes biological, and it becomes ephemeral again, but it doesn't just stop and get stuck somewhere. And this whole idea of a stasis field known as heaven, or a benevolent otherworldly place to go, or some kind of a spaceship, or whatever it is that is meant to be a nice place where you get to just go and sit still for a little while and not be fed upon, that's not appealing. That's not what you want. You actually want to be part of the entirety, the ecosystem of light, and continue in your flow state. So forgive me if people are deeply wedded to the concepts or inspired by the concepts of the stuff that's from the teachings of Ra and the law of one. I mean, I know that's affected a lot of people in their journey and their lives, but that's where my skepticism comes from. It might be like a book where it says like, nice, 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 and then now you're going to get harvested. And I'm like, all right, nice, 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 up until the point you're going to get harvested, because I don't consent to that. And I don't think that is a positive thing. Now I'll go deep. And this is just one of my own musings, but not necessarily overtly truthful. But I sometimes think that people that become embroiled in any kind of literature or concept of consciousness harvest, that those are the people that are going to go to entropy, that are not going to go to light speed, because they are being taken off of their path, which is the path of light, and de-evolving, losing momentum as consciousness, and then eventually will just go kaput and go into a state of non-existence. And non-existence actually also does count as divine union. It is not separation from the divine. That energyless state, being outside of time, actually is a form of divine union, but it is not with sentience and not with volition or empowerment or motivation. It simply is being a part of God as all of the stuff that shouldn't exist. Put it in the big pile of stuff that shouldn't exist, which is part of God, but it's the big pile of stuff that should never exist. And that's maybe on an anthropomorphic level, a difficult answer for some people to hear. Like, some of these people actually shouldn't exist, and they're going to go into the big pile of stuff that shouldn't exist at the end of time. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Which can be hard to hear, but which also might be liberating for some people because they're like, I always kind of thought that some of these people shouldn't exist, and I didn't know what to do with them. And of course, I don't promote the concept of a Christian hell of eternal suffering. Like, you got to do something with this stuff that doesn't exist. What do you do with it? You don't have to put it in like the torture chamber. You just make it non-exist. And how do you make it non-exist? By a full removal of all momentum, light, and energy from it. When that happens, all light is recovered. No light is sequestered in an unsuccessful container. And that is also big and important because when you are at infinity, you are not surrounded by anything that is not at infinity. And it also means like you don't leave anything behind. You're not going to leave behind a little piece of light stuck in someone or some energy that is stuck in someone that is not going to successfully attain getting their momentum accelerated to light speed. You're going to absorb or claw back all of that energy so that that energy is part of the continuum of light. And then anything that is not part of the continuum of light has no more existence. So I'm going to go deep because this is all like quantum physics stuff. So right now I'm talking about a universe. Like the Big Bang is this cosmology story of the beginning of your universe, uni meaning one and verse meaning the story. This is one narrative story or one timeline of what can happen from the very, very beginning of matter through all of these convolutions and complexities of biological experience to like the end. I want to say like, dun, 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 you're dead. Like when I make that pooped out sound, like to non-existence anymore. All right. So there is something that science describes that is known as the entropic heat death of the universe. And that is the eventual inevitability when everything that is a planetary nebula or the raw ingredients of potential for what can become a star, which is a generator, an emitter of light, has been used up. It's like saying you have flour in your cupboard, you have a finite amount of flour that you can use to make dough and to make bread. And you can make a certain number of loaves of bread with the ingredients in your cupboard. When you're out of flour, you have made all of the bread that will ever be made, then it is just up to you to make sandwiches and slices of toast until that bread is done, and then there's no more bread to eat. That is essentially the story of the universe, the beginning of creation or inception of matter, the creation of stars as matter coalesces together. This is what a planetary nebula is. It is a collection of the potentials for a star, mostly superheated, I want to say gust and gas. Gas and dust. It's because my brain is tired. Superheated piles of gas and dust that give rise to the organized principle of light that we know as stars. There's only a certain amount of that in existence. And when that's like your flour in your cupboard. And when you have used up all of that, those raw materials, and you have created all of the stars or loaves of bread that can possibly be created, all of those stars have a finite lifespan. So they will be emitting light and creating heat during their lifespan. But these stars have a limited lifespan, so you can only make so many sandwiches and so many pieces of toast out of them until at a certain point they're kaput. And not just they are kaput, but everyone is kaput, and there's no more flour to make more dough, to make more loaves of bread. That means that you will have the end of this universe. There will be a reduction in the light that is emitted or the light that goes on its path or goes on its journey. No more new stories will be created. And instead, what happens is all of the stars as loci or focal points of consciousness no longer emit, but instead turn inward. Science describes this as a collapsing inward or a gravitational crush, but think of it as a change in focal point of your consciousness. When you are alive, you're focused on the world outside of you and the stimulation of the world outside of you. And when you die, you go on an internal journey. You're no longer receiving information from your five senses and everything that is around you. What you're doing is taking all of your accumulated experiences from your external reality and going on a deep dive within. And from that experience, you draw back or call back to yourself all of the light that you've emitted from your lifespan. That is what a star does. The star is constantly emitting or creating reality structures. And when it is no longer creating reality structures, it then receives back all of the echoes or causality time wave reverberations of everything that the star has sent out or incepted. And that is what a black hole is. So it is the next stage of evolution of the consciousness of a grand being that we know as a star, but it is not the end of its existence, but it is where photons go, and they go endlessly on the inner journey, but really what they do is they enter into another plane of existence. So all of that in order to say that at a certain point, there will be a limitation in this level of reality where there is no more light that is emitted. That's big stuff. And then you will simply have the recapturing or re-experiencing of light that has been emitted back to the originator of that light, and then a resolution of all of those experiences. And then you will be done with this cycle, and then you will start the next cycle. But all of this in order to say that when all light and heat exits through black holes, this level of reality, you will have nothing to animate matter. Right now, you have something that is known as light heat intelligence that is animating matter. But when all of the light leaves, there is nothing here to make matter sentient or to make it behave or to make it be volitional. That is the entropic heat death of the universe. And that is when the entire level of reality here will become the Bose-Einstein condensate, the level of matter that is all the way at that far left-hand margin of the little diagram that I drew in class last week. You will have no light, no heat, no molecular movement in the entire universe. And when that happens, any atoms that are here all get smooshed together into the ultimate comfy chair, the ultimate gravitational snuggle that is known as the Bose-Einstein condensate. That means all of these things are literally occupying the space of one atom. Every single atom in existence gets overlapped on top of each other. So it's not only like you're sitting in a chair with your dog and your cat and your hamster on top of it. You're sitting in a chair with every cat, every dog, every hamster, every parakeet, every pet tarantula that could possibly be in existence, all overlapping, all sitting on everyone's lap. The overlappingness of all of these individual atoms then brings them to a type of unity consciousness as the now unified, energyless atom of everything behaves in oneness, but it also has no behavior. It is infinity at the opposite scale, end of the scale of infinity. Infinite non-being, infinite nothingness, infinite no movement. If I hold this up and I talk to you about, the infinity point here and how you're moving accelerated, infinitely fast, infinitely hot, infinitely light, infinitely intelligent. Entropy is infinitely non-intelligent. What you could call infinitely stupid, infinitely dumb, infinitely not self-aware, infinitely non-sentient, infinitely non-volitional. That means it can't do anything. Well, snap my fingers. Like, I can't do anything. That's right. It can't do anything. Very, very different than the concept of an afterlife or a Christian hell, where you have like twisted, grotesquely distorted consciousnesses that are like, oh, this feels bad. I wish I could be somewhere else. That's not what the ultimate atom of infinite density of a Bose-Einstein condensate is doing. It is not writhing in torture. It is not doing anything. It is non-being. It goes out of existence. So at the end of this big, long story that is known as the universe, all light exits this level of reality, and the stuff that is left behind goes out of existence. Dun, 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 dun. The end! I know, I'm so silly. Okay. Mary's agreeing with me, channelers. She says, I believe the same. Don't listen to channelers. They tend to be interfered by the forces against humanity. Thank you for that confirmation, Mary. It is a sad truth because I know a lot of people are looking for uplift, information, inspiration. And channelers fill that niche. They're like, I can give you uplift, information, and inspiration. But a lot of the time it is fabrication. And sometimes it is fabrication coming through like a distorted ego filter. And sometimes it is fabrication coming through a distorted ego filter that is directly connected to, as you say, the forces against humanity. And that's stuff that is anti-intelligence, the stuff that is not intelligent, it is not light, it is not organized information. And you're going to say, is it disorganized information? It's disorganized non-information, which is nonsense. So unfortunately, and I know it's a generalization, but just better to err on the side of caution, channeling is nonsense. So unfortunately, and I know the Book of Ra is a touchstone for many people in their spiritual development. And when I come forward and I say it's channeled and it's nonsense, people are going to be like, I don't like that. I understand how you might feel. I am not trying to make your day hard. I'm just trying to give you my honest assessment of these information sources so that way you can be protected from, adulterated ingredients, things that aren't real. Pedro says, I believe that we in our light are here to ascend and take our knowledge and experience back to God. Absolutely. In exactly the same way that photons are feelers and they're emitted on the journey or the path of light to have experiences, accumulate wisdom, which is more light, and then bring all of that light back to the originator of the phenomenon of light. That's exactly what we are doing as well. We are here coalescing into matter and experiencing what it is to be a biological form as part of the continuum of light. And then we return to our purely ephemeral energetic state, taking with us the accumulated or accrued wisdom of our experience of individuating, becoming massive, and then returning to the world of pure light. Michael says, thank you for a refreshing perspective. In regards to my query, I had a bad taste in my mouth after learning from you that they're non-being things here trying to have their way with us, and that the only info I was given was in a dream in 2009. My inner guidance systems say they told me, but I tell them, not like Aurora told us, many, many thanks. You're very, very welcome. And I recognize that I sometimes bring a message that can be difficult to hear. Because, it's not always love and light and nice, good stuff. Sometimes I'm warning you, like, watch out. There are dangerous things. Don't fall off a cliff. Don't get bitten by dangerous snakes. On the journey of life, sometimes I tell you things that might be inconvenient, but please know that I am motivated to protect people, not to serve myself, And to hopefully give you good information as you're running the marathon of life, I'm like, don't run over there. You're going to fall off a cliff. Don't run over there. There's poisonous snakes. This is the pathway that will bring you towards where you really want to go. And of course, if you then choose poisonous snakes, it's up to you. But yeah, I apologize that I have to, oh, don't shoot the messenger. I apologize that I have to tell you about this stuff, but I am not responsible for the existence of this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff right now that's in existence that shouldn't be in existence. But what I can take responsibility for is the flying rainbow lasagna, which is a direct pathway to entropy. Instead of having to wait for the entropic heat death of the entirety of the universe through the flying rainbow lasagna, you can send to entropy aspects of formfulness or consciousness that should not be in existence right away. And that's so much better, because otherwise what you would have to do is be like tiptoeing around and stepping over giant piles of doo-doo for the next 13 billion years. And this way, if you just send that stuff to entropy, you have 13 billion years of expansiveness and freedom. What did I tell you? When you are at light speed, there is nothing that is not around you that is not at light speed. You can't deal with my language, but we're just laughing about it. When you are at infinity and you are at light speed, there is nothing around you that doesn't exist. The only things that are around you are that which does exist. So that means you don't have to deal with any of this nonsense or non-being stuff. So right now, I think is one of the most difficult times of your embodiment and of your individuation cycle, because you are having to be in a world that's a mixture of some stuff that does exist and some stuff that does not exist. Some light versus some nonsense. Some light, intelligent information, organized presence, and some disorganized stuff that doesn't make sense and is a pile of doo-doo. And it can be very hard for you to go through your educational process and accumulate more wisdom when you are dealing with giant piles of doo-doo. So a big part of my contribution is being able to create the flying rainbow lasagna so that we can sweep up the piles of doo-doo and get them away from us so that we can then have the experience of what it is like to be accelerated at light speed and not have any piles of doo-doo around you, because it will be very, very different. Here's a good analogy. Right now, you're in a library, but some of the books in the library are like totally facetious and spelled incorrectly, bad grammar, and full of lies. And some of them, pages are pulled out, and some of them somebody colored on them with Crayolas. And some of them aren't even a book. Some of them are just like a coupon from Bed Bath & Beyond, all right? And you're trying to learn and be educated from those non-educational materials that are in the library. And how difficult it is for you as a student of life to go into the library of consciousness and be like, okay, my eyes are wide open. I'm so innocent. I'd like to learn. And have someone be like, here's a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. And you're like, this is information? Okay. No, that's trash. It's not something that you're going to learn from. And it's very difficult to figure out those levels of consciousness boundaries so that you aren't lied to, you don't ingest a bunch of nonsense, and so that you aren't overexposed to things that are simply confusing or destabilizing or completely invalid. And I'm inflamed and enraged in your favor, because I'm like, these guys are just trying to learn, and you got a crappy library without correct information in it. And how are these guys even supposed to learn anything with a crappy library like this? And you know something, it's true, but I don't want you to feel diminished. So you have a difficult challenge in your present level of attainment, where you really have to develop your own barometer of assessment about whether something is truthful or whether it is nonsense, and then internalize the truth, which is light, and eject the nonsense, which is not light. So some of these truths are light and they help you to accelerate to light speed. And some of this nonsense is not light and it drags you down. And that's why I get enraged for you, because I'm like, stop giving these guys lies. It's slowing them down. It's like if you're trying to get fit and someone keeps on feeding you cheesecake or whatever. It's like it's the antithesis of what you want to actually be doing. You want to be eating healthy and getting slimmer. So yeah, I might sometimes give difficult information to receive in the need for having boundaries of what you should be believing and shouldn't be believing, because you can't just eat everything on your plate. Because this is a fish with bones. That means, like, if you eat everything on your plate, some things would be like gross and dangerous for you to try to internalize. And I'm trying to tell you, like, don't eat that part over there. That is not edible. That is not food. And sometimes the things that I'm telling people not to eat are religious texts, child materials, things from your government and educational systems. And people might feel attached to those things, but I'm telling you to release them. Aurelia says, what people call channeling, I don't get, because what I do is I am channeling my creative life force energy as in focusing it to create art or music. And she goes on to say, I feel like channeling should mean pristine energy, intentionally focused from the soul. Like when people say channel your emotions, like a precise beam of energy. You know, Aurelia, I think you bring up a beautiful concept. The problem with channeling in this world is that many people right now have a diminished sense of self and sense of their own ego. If I asked you, like, well, what do you think about deep spiritual stuff? They'd be like, oh, I'm just a small, tiny nothingness. Like, this is me being like small and pathetic. I'm small and nothing. Don't ask me. But if I ask those people to be like, well, will you channel blah, 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 extraterrestrial? And I'll ask that question. They'll be like, okay, good. I'm going into a trance, and now I'm going to connect to this other extraterrestrial who's going to talk and know everything. Like I'm trying to say, many people right now in this time and place feel diminished in their own ego presence. They feel a sense of insecurity that their own perspective and the perspective of the answers that they come up with from their own embodiment self is not enough. But that if they let their ego step aside and let whatever, a Pleiadian speak through them, that they would respect and respond to the information from that Pleiadian more than they would respect and respond to their own perspective. That's a big problem right there. Because the Pleiadians, they don't know SHIT. They don't know anything. And they're all too happy, along with many other self-proclaimed soi-disant, self-appointed experts, are waiting in the wings to jump right in anytime you want to channel. And that is not a positive thing. So the concept of channeling is flawed from the beginning because humans have been abused. Humans have been created with the sense of insecurity and diminishment of their own ego. Like, you're not good enough. If I just asked you answer the question as you, they'd be like, not good enough. But what if you say, I'm channeling a Pleiadian, and what if you, use strange vocal tones, like talk in a funny way or choose strange wording, then they'd be like, now I will appreciate this information. And because it feels like it's coming from someone else, like, why do you respect it if it's coming from someone else? Why don't you respect it if it's coming from you? And how do you know that someone else, that guy over there, knows any more about you than you do? So Aurelia, I'm agreeing. In a proper world, the only level of channeling would be a person connecting from their ego state to their own expansive, divinely defined sense of self, who you are as God, speaking directly to you and through you as a physical, individuated human. But for people who feel bad about themselves, and oh, Cheeky's here, let's hug Cheeky. They feel like maybe I need to have someone else other than me talk about these things because I'm just me, I'm just chopped liver. Cheeky's not chopped liver. Cheeky's great, but okay. Cheeky's having a problem today. Oh, you can tell Cheeky's been having some kind of a tummy ache or a cough or something. So we just need to give her hugs. But Cheeky has total confidence in who she is as a cheeky dog. And if you asked her any kind of a question, she would say, I, as Cheeky, respond with this is my answer. And I don't have to justify it by saying that I got my answer from, a magical sky dog who speaks through me or something like that. And I mean, I'm being a little bit silly when I talk about these things, but I really am talking about the need for profound healing in people's ego and their sense of self-value, to be able to value yourself and your own unique perspective, and not to overvalue the perspective of something else that proclaims to be an archangel or an extraterrestrial or something other than you. Because the perspective of yourself is valid and is valuable. And really, this is like emitting or transmitting, maybe is better. But I do identify with the word channel. Yeah, making sense and agreeing with me there. Yes. So the people that are channels, okay, so I'll just say about this with me. I don't channel because I have worked very, very hard to even be able to be in my body with full ownership and sovereignty of my boundaries. That I'm like, I'm me. This is my body. I've been here for 23 years at this point, and I speak through my body. So I don't want to step aside even for 5 minutes to let something else speak through my body. You know what I feel like? I feel like, get your own body. Like, you want to come here and say something, like, get your own body. Because you know what? I just worked very hard for 23 years to have this body. I really don't want to have someone else talking through it. All right. So it speaks to some low self-worth of embodied native humans who might feel that their perspective is not valuable enough, and like they will gladly step aside and let someone else drive their vehicle and say things and share things. I wouldn't do that, because what I would do instead is retain your sovereignty, maintain your boundaries, and not allow, I want to say, any old fool to come along and self-proclaim as an otherworldly teacher and then teach through you. Having a body and having formfulness is a huge privilege, and is not something that you should throw away. Be like, because you know what? Like, think about that. Think about how many humans are like, I hate my life. Escapism. Escape, escape. Like, get me out of here. I want to ascend or fly off on a clanking middle spaceship or go somewhere else. Like, it's always feeling not good enough. But to the otherworldly, non-embodied creatures, they're like, I wish I had a body. Can I have your body for 5 minutes to speak through you? Like, you guys have to start to understand that, like, bodies are special. And having a body and being able to speak through one is a unique privilege. And I wouldn't want you to throw that privilege away by channeling or letting something else speak through you. So I hope that that is gentle. I hope it doesn't sound too accusatory or blameful of anyone who proclaims to be a channel, or for anyone who has listened to their stuff. I think that that's just a level of maturity. Like, you were young and immature, you didn't know, it seemed like a good thing, people talked it up. But now I hope that you're moving into greater levels of maturity and perspective and attainment, where you recognize that that is inappropriate and can even be considered a little bit of like grooming. Like, if you are a young, not that advanced person with a physical body, and something that is an older, more wise, non-embodied creature comes along and says, hey, is it okay if you just step aside for a moment and I'd like to speak through your body and blah, blah. And they think like, yeah, sure. Like, it's no problem at all. It's like, no, actually, this is a deeply intimate thing and you should never do this. And it's totally wrong. And you'd be like, whatever, like asking if someone can use your toothbrush, like, hey, can I use your toothbrush? Like, no, that's gross. I don't share my toothbrush with anyone. Like, they are kind of asking for a lot to come through and channel through your body. And not all of these transmitted consciousnesses are responsible. Not all of them are being good by what they're doing. In fact, it is very, very easy to F up someone's life or F up their consciousness by bringing in erroneous information. So just as I'm telling you about how it's so specific, a photon doesn't just fall on a random leaf and then have the experience of photosynthesis. It intentionally comes down and is a part of that particular leaf. So you can't have just like random spirits that come through and they're like, oh, I think you should be my channel and I'm going to share some random information and then put it in a book and people can randomly find it. None of that feels right. The real artistry and the genius of the formfulness of the cosmic infrastructure is when everything is super specific, everything is customized. That means that you are receiving exactly the amount of light that you're supposed to receive. I told you about this in the past two teachings, past 2 weeks. The sun and the stars emit a spherical shell expanding of light out of themselves, like pulsing out of themselves. And you just receive one little beam of light that comes into your eye, and you see it as one little sparkling twinkle of light in the sky. But that's because you would be totally overwhelmed and mind fried if you got all of that light at once. So you get a customized, tiny little portion of the consciousness that is being emitted from that star. And it's not by accident. The light beams that come inside of you and stimulate you are totally meant for you. So yeah, the idea of just randomized, consciousnesses or otherworldly presences that jump into bodies and randomly start to share light and write books about it is not very ideal. Because you already know, like, this person will be this part of this book, and this person will receive this, and this person will receive this. Like, it's not the same as having a direct, like a mentor who talks to you and says, this is exactly what you need to hear in this moment, because it's not an interchangeable or universal expression. Like some people in the gym need to be bulking up and lifting heavy and eating tons of carbs. And some people need to be doing more cardio and reducing and being in a calorie deficit. It depends on what your body needs. So I hope that all of this comes across like in a very gentle way. Because in this class, in Path of Light, I'm not even really talking about the negative entities and different things like that that are in reality. We're really just talking about the journey of consciousness and the transformative nature of light on its path, light on its journey, which is what you are. You are light on its journey. So you did a lot of heavy lifting today. Definitely, you should take off all of your equipment and you should hydrate and you should like feel like you did a good job. And if you haven't watched the whiteboards, go back and watch the whiteboards because I draw it all out very effectively. And the colors that I use and the diagrams that I use, it's all very intentional because our brains are very visual and it will help you to comprehend how molecules are coming together. And please do your homework for next week as well. Next week, I'm going to wrap class up with a lot of these more abstract concepts of what light is as you are on your journey of consciousness. Things that are like, what happens if you write a book and light is information and it's in that book? Does it get stored there for forever? What about the light that is stored orally in the form of like a teacher or a guru? What happens if they die? What happens when you die? What is your journey like? What is it to be on the path of light when you are not standing on the sidelines and watching light moving at light speed, but directly in the path of that light flowing to you and how it has an impact on your acceleration and your metabolism of consciousness. That's what's coming up for next week, okay? So until then, now everybody gets to rest. Hydrate, rest. You can do some stretching. You don't have to work hard and work your brains. But then think about these things. Yeah, after you take a little bit of a rest, you need a break day, or a rest day. But then go back to it and do the whiteboards, do your homework, and keep thinking about Path of Light. Pedro says, love the light and the lasagna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Diane says, thank you. You're so very welcome. Thank you to everybody who's in this class. You are brave and noble, courageous consciousness warriors who are willing to dive into the deep end with me. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to everybody who is not formally enrolled, but who is catching these on YouTube, because I'm very, very glad for you to be able to learn about this too. Mary says, good night. Good night to everyone. Sandy says, thank you. You're so welcome. Mark says, thank you. Aurora, Cheeky, and everyone here. You're very welcome. Cheeky, everybody loves you. Cheeky's doing great. All right. And then thank you. You're so welcome, Caroline. All right. Chris says, excellent. Thank you. You're so welcome. Lisa physicist, thank you. Love you and Cheeky. Cheeky, everybody loves you. I love it when you guys love Cheeky. Okay, good job. Take a break, everyone. Thank you. And I look forward to sharing and completing this class next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much, everyone.